Hello, hello. Welcome to the channel. Today, I wanted to take a quick few minutes to chat about my current rating scales, and then maybe you guys can weigh in, tell me if you think that I'm being fair, if I should change things around. I want to go into 2026 sort of completely ready and not need to change it partway through the year. And I've mentioned it before, but I keep noticing that when I rate something like a 3, for instance, which I think is a decent, I'm like, yeah, it was a good book. I liked it. Most people are looking, at least that I'm hearing, are saying 4s and 5s. Is they're like, I liked it, and I'm like, well, maybe I'm being really harsh. So I want to show you what goes into my ratings and get some feedback. See if you guys agree or if I should make some adjustments for 2026. So let me switch on over. Rating scales. First one we're looking at is my general rating recommendation type of scale. When I'm looking at choosing a rating, as you can see here, there's a lot of different factors that go into it. The first one is just, do I like it? That's a pretty easy yes, no. It's, binary. And then recommend is yes, no, but then I have one that's a maybe. It depends. It would depend on whether or not someone's asking for something in that particular category or that particularly fits. It's not something I'm going to go out of my way necessarily to be like, yes, go read it. Reread, again, that's sort of a yes, no, maybe. You will see I also have likely on here. Likely is at some point, I probably will reread it, or I'd be okay with rereading it, but it's not going to be like on my must read again soon kind of situation. So we'll look at that again. And then, of course, I have a description. So for a 1 scale, or a 1 star, I did not like it. I would not recommend it, generally. I would not reread it, and I either DNF'd it or I hated it. I feel like that's pretty obvious. I know that technically I could put 0 stars for that, but most of the places that you can rate things require a minimum of 1 star. And so I decided that would be sort of my minimum number would be a 1. Now, if I DNF'd it just because it wasn't my jam, which doesn't happen very often, I'm probably just not going to rate it at all. Usually, I don't read it if I DNF'd it. So typically, this is hate. Now, if I DNF'd it for sort of cause, if I'm like, hey, there are serious problems with this book, the way people are being treated, and it's not being addressed, or like I almost DNF'd Water for Elephants because of the treatment of animals. And it had some ethical feeling for me. I may go in and put a rating on it, but it's not happened yet. I usually try to finish them. There are very few books that I DNF. So usually one is hate. I'm thinking The Graduates, hate, loathe. What is it? And despise entirely, or whatever that quote is. This is the one for me. 2. This is where you'll see most of my books show up, where I'm just like, didn't like it. Is going to be in that 2 category. Like, no. Recommend, no. Reread, no. Description, not for me. I can see why people read it. I could see potentially why some people would want to read it or enjoy it. Not for me. I don't ever want to see this sort of book ever again. Not something I will reread unless I am forced to. 3. This is where most of my books land. It is a, did I like it? Yes. Would I recommend it? Maybe. Depends on who I'm talking to, what I am, how I'm feeling about it at the time. If we're chatting about something and I'm like, ooh, this really fits into what they're chatting about, I might recommend it. I'm not going to go out of my way to be like, hey, everyone, you have to read this book. But I might recommend it depending on what's going on in the conversation, who I'm talking to, etc. Reread? Maybe. It will very much depend on my mood on these ones. If there are some books that are like holiday favorites, for instance, where I'm not loving them on the everyday, but if it's like the perfect book for the holiday and just really feeling that, maybe. There's a possibility. And description, liked. I liked the book. I'm not going to go back and probably do a whole lot with it. Not going to really think about it a ton in the future, but it was an enjoyable time. Then 4s and 5s. 4s and 5s are both sort of yeses across the board. Yes, I like them. Yes, I'll recommend them. Yes, I'll read them again. 4 is a likely at some point, so not going to reread them right away, probably not in the next couple of years, but I'm probably going to circle back to it at some point because I enjoyed it a lot. 5 is yes, it's going to happen. No way it's not going to happen. Don't know when yet. Probably at least a year because I tend to not reread that frequently. I like to sort of have a broad amount of things that I read, but I'm going to circle back around to this book because it either was just that amazing, was phenomenal commentary on something, really made me think, or I just felt like I didn't get everything I needed out of that book because it was just that good. So descriptions, 4 stars, really liked. Yeah. And then 5 stars, loved. I will likely at some point buy this book for my shelf if it's a 5 star. Not all books get bought, but a good chunk of the ones who are 5 stars will go on to like I would like to get these at some time, maybe a birthday or Christmas present kind of on my Amazon wish list type of situation. There are some that I'm just going to go out and immediately buy because I need a shelf trophy of this because it just brings me such joy. But yeah, so that's sort of my description, and hopefully that makes sense about why most things are showing up as a 3 star and very little is showing up as a 5 star. But I don't know if I am being harsh. I feel like if you have a scale of 1 to 5, most things should show up as a 3, right? You have the my brain just turned off. It's a arch, a parabola. Anyway, most things should show up as a 3 because that is statistically the most common. You're probably going to be picking things that you like more often than not because you're looking at genres, you're looking at authors you like, etc. So you should have more 3s than anything else. And then as you're expanding your brain and the types of things that you're reading, you're probably going to have some things that are on the didn't really love it side. I guess it's actually this way because of how it's recording. So your 1s and 2s, and then you're going to have some absolute standouts that are going to be over here. But the majority of things will likely show up in your I enjoyed it section, which is 3 for me. But if you think I should really adjust it and make 3 like a 4, and then combine 4 and 5, then I have to figure out something for 3. So more things are showing up as a 4. I don't know. What are your thoughts? All right, so that is the rating scale you see on the regular. You don't regularly see my spicy scale. I don't know that I ever even mention spicy scale at all, unless it is what I would probably say is either at the erotica stage or gets real darn close. I don't read a ton of those, but I do read some of them. And so this is sort of a scale I use. I don't talk about it, but if that's something that you would like to see generally, and you're like, hey, if there's a romance you're chatting about, make sure to put the spicy scale rating on there. I can do that. That's easy enough. I already do that by putting it into a list. So I use a few different ways to track my books. I know Goodreads is not the best option, but I started there. So I still have a Goodreads, and I still put things in there, and I do rate all the books in all of the things, or in all the places, which is why I don't have half stars, because some of them don't allow half stars, and some of them allow quarter stars. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just go with 1, because then it's consistently the same everywhere. Anyway, got off topic. I have Goodreads. In Goodreads, I have shelves, and I put them into a shelf based on the spicy level. So I can easily pull that, and I can go back and look. And it's specifically there because if I am chatting with, say, someone who doesn't really love things that are above, like a 3 spicy level, or doesn't want anything above a 2 because they're looking for a book that is, age appropriate. So I guess I should do a little tangent. My husband has siblings who are our age, but he also has siblings who are in middle school. Yeah, technically they're still middle school. I think next year they go to high school. So there is definitely some times where I'm discussing books with the kiddos, and I do not want to suggest something that is heavy on explicit scenes, using a lot of explicit language. Wouldn't be something that they would be comfortable, and that their parents would be comfortable with them reading. We've already run into that conversation sort of one time, and it was definitely more of a 2, but there was some euphemism language. It was like 2.5, but it wasn't a book that I suggested. It was a book that was second in a series that we had read the first one together because that was a book they were reading for school. And the second one in that series, because we liked the first one so much, they went ahead and read the second one, and I hadn't yet read it. And I got a text message being like, I skipped this chapter because it made me uncomfortable. I'm like, good on you. Also, chat with your parents. But at the same time, like, those are things I want to be mindful of. So I do mark that down. I also would never suggest that my mother read something that is above a 3. My sister, on the other hand, probably at least a 4. I think we'd probably chat about whether or not she'd be interested in a 5 or not, but I'd feel comfortable suggesting something for a 4, just because I know the different people more. So when we're chatting about something, I can make sure to give them recommendations that I feel like they would actually enjoy, especially if they're not getting something from a library and they're actually purchasing it. I don't want to make suggestions that are sort of not what they're looking for. So I will say my rating scale is based heavily on romance.io's scale. So you'll see very similar language here. And that is because sometimes I will look up a book and I want them to still sort of fit into the categorization. So I'll be like, hey, what am I in for? I have not read this book before, or someone's telling me I should read it. Is this a book that I can, take with me to read while I'm at a family event, while I'm waiting for my husband afterwards? Because sometimes, like, we'll go to a holiday event and then he'll help out around the house with his grandparents or something for a couple hours after, and his grandma and I will sit on the couch and chat and read or stitch or whatever. And I'm not gonna take something with me that is very spicy. Just not appropriate, right? So I'll look it up, and I want to make sure that it fits into the same categories. So I went with that route. I may make changes to this as we go on, because there are a couple that I'm not sure I really love, but that's sort of where I started, at least. And I started this, I want to say, maybe Q2 of this year. So this is sort of not even a full year in, and that's where I started, and we'll make changes as it goes on. So now that I've chatted way too much, 1, you might have some meaningful glances, that's a word, glances, or kissing, but there's no sex on or off page. It is sort of those longing or tease. You may find out in book 2 that they have some romance going on, but you're not really, there's nothing really sexual outside of some kisses, maybe some hand holding, that type of situation. Then you get to a 2, I want to call it pepper, I guess. 2 pepper. I use the peppers because I've heard other people use those. I've also seen little fires, but honestly, I couldn't find a fire that I could change the colors of. So anyways, there we go. At least one intimate scene happens, but it's a behind closed door scene. So these ones I'd still feel comfortable suggesting to high school and college obviously they're adults, but high school age students, so long as, I know the parents and that they're allowed to read that kind of stuff. Because I know that some people, even closed door, they're like, nope, not my kids. And that's perfectly fine, parenting decision. But most of the parents that I know are cool with their high school age kids doing closed door, no issues. So that's sort of where I'm at for 2 stars. Then 3 stars, you'll have an open door scene, at least one, but it's not necessarily explicit. You may have euphemistic languages. So you'll be like, I know what's going on. I know it's open door, but we're not like saying he put X there and she touched this thing. And you're using more euphemisms and I don't want to say gentle because it's not gentle, but like, you know, it's not in your face explicit material. Anything above a 3 is going to be explicit. So for a 4, you have to have at least 2 open door scenes, and it has to have more explicit language and a variety of sexual activities. So you're not just going to have one scene of, let me get a little more, how he says, your 2 scenes are not going to be exactly the same, and they're not going to include just like more of that euphemism. It's going to actually be like, he touched there, she touched there, this happened, these bodily fluids may be existing, that type of thing. So we're starting to get into explicit material at this point. And then 5 is just, this is explicit material. There's going to be several different explicit scenes. You may have more adventurous sexual acts throughout the book. And here's where I don't necessarily know if I love having it, if it's adventurous, automatically going into a 5-star. Because adventurous is very, everyone's opinion is different, right? So for instance, if someone thinks that anything that includes any kind of kink whatsoever is adventurous, then things that are probably going to be a 3 because it's euphemistic language, but because it's adventurous, it automatically goes to a 5. And I don't know that I agree with that. Or if they have like one kink, but it is a fairly common kink, I don't know that it necessarily needs to go from a 4 to a 5. So I'm still sort of playing around with how I feel about that. If there are something in 5, it's usually going to be something that is written specifically for being erotica. And that's kind of where I've settled on if it's a 5. So you're going to have more sexually based scenes in these types of labeled books than you would necessarily, than the plot maybe needs. You're going to see a lot more spice than plot in some cases. A lot of these ones tend to be shorter because they are either novellas or they are novels, but there is more spice than plot, so they can wrap up a little quicker. It's not a one and done for sure. Like they're always going to be short, but I tend to find that they usually are. So I mentioned the other day, what is the name of that series? And a Nexus was in it. The one about the dragons. I did put this one as a 5 pepper on my list for when I was categorizing it, and that was because there were mostly there was plot and there was a lot going on about like the lore of this these creatures and their culture and things, but it was over the course of 6 books that you really built that lore. The majority of the plot in each individual book was just, this person is going to hook up with somebody because it's been foretold, and this is all the things that they do. And then you might have some other things sprinkled in that give you some color about why it's happening and how this person is feeling and what's going on in the background and in other rooms and other spaces. But the majority of the point of the book was, there's going to be some hooking up with dragons. That was literally the point. Like you have to like go through this entire, what is the I can't think right now. But anyway, basically you have a thing you have to do. So you have to do this step and then this step and then this step. It's not an SOP. My brain is still in work mode. Ceremony, I guess. That's not the word I'm looking for, but it's like a ceremony. And each of those things is that like they have to have one person who represents this, who wakes up the first dragon, and then this person wakes up that dragon, and each of them has to like symbolically represent something, and then all over, once all these dragons have been awakened and have bonded, then they can wake up the entire dragon race for another X period of time before they all sleep again. And I was like, okay, not my favorite plot, but it fulfilled the requirement for that particular need, and it was a book I got on Kindle Unlimited, so we moved on. Anywho's, that's this. That's all I've really got. I hope that makes sense, and I didn't blush too much. But yeah, I do read things in all of these categories. I will say that the majority of the stuff that I read is like a 3 or a 4. Unless I'm reading YA stuff, which obviously would be like a 1 and 2, maybe some 3s when we're getting into later high school, early college scenes. So, for example, that book that I talked about reading with my little brother-in-law, they were in. There was no explicit language. It is talked about how they had been intimate and how it was awkward, but they got through the awkwardness, they talked it out, and they, in general, were happy that it had occurred. It didn't get too much into it. It was technically open door because it didn't fade to black, but it also didn't go into the mechanics. It was very general. And so it fit into a 3-star. I know that that is not always why that's more NA, which is the new adult. In most places when you get to that level 3, but and even some 4 for NA, but usually YA is like 1s and 2s, and then new adult is like a 3. Is how I've heard it described. But yeah. Anyways, let me know what your thoughts are on both of these scales. If I need some adjustments going into 2026, I would love to get that taken care of now. That way, all of the 26 can be rated with the same categorizations for ease of statistics at the end of the year and chatting consistency. So, I would love your opinion, and I will chat with you guys next time. Bye!